What is up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Dense Pixels Podcast. I'm your host, Brad, joined this week by my co-host, Carrie.
What's up?
So Micah is out of town. That's okay, because we've been playing a lot of Link's Awakening. We're going to talk about that later in the podcast. And so, Carrie, I'll talk about Borderlands 3 in a second. You've still been playing Monster Hunter, notably not the new expansion yet, though, and Link to the Past as well.
Yeah, so I'm still playing Monster Hunter at this point. I'm just sort of grinding up my stuff and my gear so that I'm ready by the time Iceborne hits PC in January. Playing through event quests and whatnot, having a good time doing that. Not really much new on that front because, again, Iceborne isn't out for PC for another few months. And then, I was on vacation last week, so I had a fun time starting a playthrough of Link to the Past on the Switch Online Super Nintendo service, and yeah, that game holds up.
It does, and that's it's cool that you brought that up, because when we talk about Link's Awakening, I'll probably draw back to Link to the Past a little bit, since especially with the history of Link's Awakening.
Oh,
sure, being what it is. So yeah, I finished the Borderlands 3 campaign. It was easily my favorite Borderlands story that they've done so far, even without a villain with the gravitas of a handsome Jack missing from this one. There were some twists and turns that were a little unexpected. So I literally just finished it last night.
Okay.
The ending song that plays over the credits got a chuckle out of me, which I'm not going to, of course, spoil it, but when you play the game, it'll make you laugh considering what happens right before the end credits start. Yeah, I really had a good time with it. Just a really well-paced game. Really enjoying getting some of the new weapons. I don't think Mike and I talked too much about legendaries last week, but I've actually gotten quite a few since then. The Flood is an amazing Jacob's pistol. If you like using Jacob's weapons, because it basically can fire off 8 shots in about a second, and it has insanely fast reload. I found a Malawan submachine gun called the Egon, which is basically a fucking proton thrower from Ghostbusters, which is pretty funny as well. There's some really cool weapons. Looking forward to kind of wrapping up the side quests on my Siren with Mayhem mode activated. So Mayhem mode, for those not familiar, is kind of Borderlands' take on the Torment difficulty levels that are present in like a Diablo 3, for example, where it makes the enemies a little bit more difficult and gives them like more health and things like that. But it also gives you much better odds at getting good loot. It also brings all the enemies up to your current level. So even though a lot of the side quests are quests that I've had in my mission log for quite some time, they'll still provide a bit of a challenge because of the Mayhem mode kind of bumps them up. And then I don't know when I want to start True Vault Hunter mode, which is kind of the new game plus for Borderlands. I'm going to be balancing that with playing with the other characters, but I know for the other characters, I'm going to be exclusively playing, with friends, probably jumping into other people's games and playing with them, because I'm not as worried about, going through the story strictly with anyone else that I use. But just a really good time, so I'm looking forward to digging into the end game, and I'm looking forward to maybe I can talk Micah next time he's on into doing we'll do like a spoiler cast section on Borderlands and give you guys proper warning, because I think he'll probably be done by next week as well, if I had to guess. So that is it for what we've been playing. Link's Awakening, again, we'll save to the main part of the show. New releases this week. There's quite a bit. Again, we are in the fall. We are in the full swing of release season. Contra Rogue Corps comes out for PC, PS4, Switch, and Xbox One. Dead by Daylight comes to Nintendo Switch. Noita comes to PC. Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast comes to PS4 and Switch. Did I pronounce Noita? No, is it Noita?
No, just I'm still just bemused by the whole idea that in the year of our Lord 2K19, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 is getting a re-release.
Yes, and I never even played the first one. I'm vaguely unfamiliar with Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, or with the Jedi Knight series.
Pretty cool story. Pretty fun gameplay. I mean, as far as the Star Wars video games are concerned, they rank pretty high, I think. So
the follow-up to Terrence's 2017 Game of the Year, The Surge. The Surge 2 comes out on PC, PS4, and Xbox One. It was Game of the Year by default, Carrier, because it was like one of 5 new games that he played that year, and it's the one he enjoyed the most.
Oh.
Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger. I don't know if that's 9 or if it's supposed to be IX. Comes to PC, PS4, Switch, and Xbox One. Code Vein comes to PC, PS4, and Xbox One. Dragon Quest XI comes to the Nintendo Switch. The Switch is also seeing releases in the eShop of Dragon Quests 1, 2, and 3. Ori and the Blind Forest comes to Nintendo Switch, and FIFA 20 comes out on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. And Carrie did a wonderful job compiling the new releases this week. I might have to task you with doing that every week, actually.
Oh, no.
Because I hate it. And plus, I can never find Xbox because they don't post a new release thing in their blog anymore, which drives me insane.
Okay, like, I literally only, like, copied and pasted this from, like, Kotaku today, because they posted, like, here's our list of all the big games coming out this fall. So I was like, neat. There you
perfect.
go.
See, I don't even have access. I just always go with the PS4 blog that they do every week, and then Nintendo has a very robust release calendar on their website as well. So real quick, before we get into quick hit news, don't forget to go to youtube.com/densepixels, click the red subscribe button, ring the bell icon. You'll never miss whenever we post a video, which is usually this podcast in video format every week. If I ever do Let's Plays, it's always going to be on youtube.com/densepixels. So make sure you subscribe there. If you have not been a premium subscriber yet for TMP Studios, go to densepixels.com/premium, sign up for just $5 a month. $50 for the entire year. It gets you access to our premium slate of podcasts, including the Look Forward Political Podcast, The Men with the Golden Tongues featuring me and Micah, No Time to Bleed, our action movie podcast, and the Area of Grievances, Jay and Micah's Seinfeld podcast. Again, that's densepixels.com/premium. And no matter what app you use to get your podcast, make sure you subscribe to this show and all of the other shows in the TNP Studios network. That includes the Nerdpocalypse, Black on Black Cinema, and Coming Distractions. If you guys are not Coming Distractions subscribers, Jay just posted a review of Ad Astra, the new Brad Pitt movie that he got to go check out. It's up there right now. You can find it either on the Coming Distractions podcast feed or on YouTube at the Nerdpocalypse. So news, WB Montreal had a very unsubtle tease on Batman
They're
Day.
out here making my life fucking difficult.
Yeah, so apparently the presumption is there's going to be a Court of Owls Batman game possibly announced tomorrow during the PlayStation State of Play, which we'll talk about in a second.
So in my real life, I work at a publishing company where we do reference books about comic books, and I've done a book on video games and tabletop games and all sorts of cool shit. And I'm currently working on a guide to specifically Batman collectibles. And I just finished having our creative director lay out the video game section. And I swear to fucking God, if they don't announce this game by the end of the week, they are really testing my patience here. Because I need to have this book as up to date as possible. And of course, WB Montreal would come with less than 2 weeks to go before my book deadline and be like, I wonder if we're going to do a new Batman game. I wonder if we're going to do a Court of Owls game. So I really hope that it gets announced formally during State of Play so I can put 2 sentences in and a teaser image and being this comes out here. And it's done by the same dev team that did Arkham Origins and whatever. But of course this would happen when I'm on deadline for a Batman book, is basically what I'm saying. I'm kind of professionally frustrated about it, but personally kind of excited.
You have been a journalist for the better part of 12 years now. Am I not right?
Yeah.
This should be something you're completely accustomed to.
No, legit. When I was working on, I think it was 2 weeks before my collecting video games book came out, that Nintendo announced the Switch, and I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
So this created a bit of buzz online, as I would expect. So here's a couple questions that I have for you, Carrie. So
Okay.
Don't think it's coming out. I mean, so let's just assume for the sake of argument that this is a new Batman Arkham whatever game that has the Court of Owls prominently featured in it. Not going to come out this year. I don't think they would drop this news in September and then release it in 2019.
No.
When do you think this comes out next spring, even though spring's already loaded, or do you think this is going to be a next generation game?
Ooh, I think it could go either way. Yeah, I think this could be next spring. I think a sort of 6 to 8 month sort of like prep period for AAA titles such as this is sort of industry standard at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But it also wouldn't surprise me to have a AAA Batman title be a next-gen console launch title either. Mm. So, yeah, this could really go either way, and I wouldn't be surprised regardless.
So the reason everyone thinks is there's a teaser video that was put up of like a celebration because Batman's 80th anniversary, Batman Day, was this past weekend, and it's of a video of a bat signal being shown on the side of a building, and then there are a couple images that pop up over top of it. One of them is tangentially related to Ra's al Ghul, so people are saying maybe Ra's al Ghul's in it. Again, we got the Talons symbol, which is related to Court of Owls. Here's the thing, though. So a lot of people, just because Court of Owls was fucking mentioned and that comic line, like I don't read comic books, and even I'm aware of how cool Court of Owls was, because I actually did check out some of that Batman run when they had it out there.
Yeah.
So I understand the excitement around it because of that. But at the same time, it's being developed by WB Montreal, the maker of Batman Arkham Origins, a game that kind of sort of has been declared persona non grata by the Batman Arkham series at large. I mean, Arkham City and Arkham Asylum both got HD up-res re-releases on current generation consoles, and ain't shit out there for Arkham Origins.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of these games are very good. I haven't played through all of them start to finish. I've sort of played bits and pieces of each of them. Mm-hmm. And while Arkham Origins is ostensibly, objectively not as good as the Rocksteady developed Arkham games, I don't think that made it like a bad game.
No, it wasn't a bad...
It just wasn't as good.
Right. I mean, so what I think people can realistically expect from this, assuming that it's going to happen, is that you're going to get a new Batman Arkham game using the Arkham Knight engine. Like, it's just going to use the Arkham Knight engine. And if that sounds exciting to you, then great. And if it doesn't, then I wouldn't sweat it. But the point that I would make to people is that if they announce that, hey, there's going to be a new BioShock game made from the makers of BioShock 2, or there's going to be a new Borderlands game coming from the makers of Borderlands the pre-sequel, would you really be that excited?
Yeah. No,
probably not.
That's fair. Ultimately, at this point, it's been about a little more than 4 years since Arkham Knight came out. And I think people were sort of satisfied story-wise with that game and maybe less satisfied with certain gameplay aspects of that.
The opposite is probably true, because outside of the Batmobile, the gameplay was pretty solid. But I think a lot of people were kind of meh.
I think a lot of people get hung up on the Batmobile in that game.
Oh, rightfully so. I mean, it was terrible. But the story actually was a little pedestrian for a lot of people because it was so predictable. Like the identity of the Arkham Knight was very obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I like that character. I mean, it's Jason Todd. Like, I'll go ahead and spoil it now. Game's
been out for 4 years.
Game's been out, whatever.
Okay, so.
Jason Todd is like my favorite Bat-related character, so I kind of enjoyed narratively that take on him. But yeah, I mean, I think Court of Owls is it's one of the, I guess, sort of best known. I guess it's modern.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say of all the Batman stories that have taken place in this century, Court of Owls has been around for less than 10 years, so that's extremely modern. So as far as contemporary Batman storytelling is concerned, Court of Owls is probably like the best known and best universally loved by fans. So yeah, I think there's some there's some opportunities for some really cool stuff story-wise here. So ultimately, again, professionally, I just chip, chop, chip. I'm on a deadline, WB.
It's so funny that's what you're taking from this story is like, I don't
Yes.
care, just announce your game or don't, so I can
Yeah.
make my video game or my Batman collectible book.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yep.
Speaking of Batman, that's not the only Batman video game related news we have to talk about this week. There is a current Batman event going on in Fortnite as we speak. Until October 6th, you can get the Caped Crusader pack of cosmetic and weapons that are all Batman themed in Fortnite. And the Tilted Town is now Gotham City for this promotional period as well.
I actually quite like the cosmetics that they went with. I really like the bat suits that they went with.
Yeah, it's funny because they are very it's very Batman while still being very obviously in like the Fortnite like art direction.
Yeah,
style.
I mean, you've got two different suits. One is more live action and the other is more, I would say, animated series influenced.
Mhm.
But it's cool. Catwoman looks good. I don't play Fortnite and I never will, but this is a cool tie-in.
So among the other things you can get a bat glider to glide around in Fortnite. You can get a Batman grapnel gun and an explosive batarang. It'll be funny watching people dressed as Batman running around shooting the shit out of people with guns, because that, of course, is very,
right?
very Batman.
That's not how Batman works. But does it come with bat shark repellent?
I don't think they're going for that Batman. Unfortunately, I think that they're sticking with the more modern interpretations. But yeah, like you said, the costumes I think look pretty good. Yeah, even the Schumacher one doesn't look half bad considering.
No, it looks pretty cool. It looks distinctly 90s, but it still, I think, looks pretty cool.
Yeah,
so
you also have you have like a Batarang shaped axe that you can use as well. So yeah, definitely very, very many Batman themed things. I'll be excited to see it's in action. I don't have cost in front of me, but I have no idea. I would assume probably around like $20. I hope anyway. They're gouging people on this. Shame on them. But
Yep.
what else new? Real quick, we mentioned the State of Play broadcast that's coming. It may be airing as you're listening to this. It's supposed to be dropping Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Supposedly, there will be Last of Us 2 news, including possibly release date, which was leaked. Well, something was leaked. We don't know if it's official yet, but the leak said February 20th. That seems plausible.
Does anyone really care that much about The Last of Us 2 at this
point? The Last of Us, yeah. People do. That game has that game has more broad appeal than you might think it does.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm also in the camp of I think the story was not as great as everyone said that it was, but that's just us.
It's a pretty straightforward zombie story, guys.
It's a pretty straightforward Children of Men riff, basically. Yeah. But they did say don't expect any updates related to the next gen consoles. We'll have more information for you on that next week. Speaking of PS5, Sony has announced that the PS5 will include a power saving feature to tackle climate change.
Cool.
Sony announced that it's working with the UN as part of its Playing for the Planet initiative, which aims to mobilize gamers to take an active role in combating climate change because the government doesn't seem interested in doing so right now.
I hate it.
So,
but this is cool. This is cool. Basically, Sony and Microsoft, who we'll talk about in a moment, are both participating in the United Nations Playing for the Planet initiative.
Well, we can get that. We can get right into that right now. So,
okay, cool.
So in addition to this, Microsoft has announced that it plans to make 825,000 new Xbox consoles carbon neutral. Now, I'm not exactly sure how that is going to work exactly. Because they and Microsoft also did not state which consoles those were going to be. They did mention that they were talking about Xbox Ones or One X's or the new one that's coming out at some point down the road.
Right.
And Microsoft's also doing more than that. They're saying they're committing to a carbon emission reduction plan to reduce their supply chain emission by 30% by 2030. Also, they are challenging players to build environmentally friendly structures in Minecraft.
Because that helps.
Because that sure does help. Yeah.
I guess it's trying to change people's mindset about things. But ultimately, the UN said that combined these commitments from 21 different companies, which also includes Twitch, Google, Rovio, Ubisoft, and others, will result in a 30 million ton reduction of CO2 emissions by 2030. We'll see millions of trees planted and various other, quote, green nudges in game design and improvements to energy management, packaging, and device recycling. They said that Sony's PS5 plans alone will basically, if just 1 million users enable the feature, it would save an equivalent to the average electricity use of 1,000 United States homes. So it's nice. It's nice that even if Congress is cool with the world being literally fucking on fire, that certain other companies are starting to take sort of like a first step. Again, these are green nudges. This isn't a massive overhaul of the way we live our lives. This is just tiny little things that the companies are doing in order to ultimately build up into what amounts to a pretty significant difference in emissions and stuff like that. So yeah.
I think a lot of more major corporations will kind of be spearheading this anyway. Like car company, like even though our current U.S. administration is trying their damnedest to help like the oil and gas industry, car companies are just making more renewable energy cars just because that's where the consumer demand is. Mm-hmm. So I mean that's just the way it's going to be. Unfortunately, because we're relying on corporations to do this, it's going to probably take a lot longer time we possibly might not have. So it would be really nice if everyone could kind of coalesce, but I guess I'm glad that Sony and Microsoft are doing what they can to help combat the current crisis that we are sitting in. Borderlands 3, of course, released a couple weeks ago, as we talked about on the show. They have already sold 5 million copies in the first 5 days, and a special note was made by 2K saying that PC sales were, quote, incredibly strong, even though the game is only being sold exclusively through the Epic Games Store. According to 2K, this basically over the same time period, they have doubled the amount of sales, 50% up compared to Borderlands 2 within the same period of time. So that means Borderlands 2 is probably a little bit over 3 million, Borderlands 3 a little bit over 5. I find that a little interesting considering the series hasn't really been, around for the better part of 5 years, if you count the pre-sequel as being part of the overall chain. But good news if you're a fan of Borderlands, and I would imagine that they're probably going to continue to support this with lots of content, much like the Bloody Harvest, which is coming to Borderlands 3 in October. This was announced on the Borderlands show live stream that happened last week that's hosted by Kind of Funny. It's going to be the first of several free limited time events that you don't have to, purchase any additional content for. They're just getting in on the event train, much like other live service games, even though technically Borderlands not a live service games. It's going to give you new enemies, a new location, and of course, new loot. So very cool.
Neat.
Yes, looking forward to that. And that's games like this kind of need that stuff just to get you back into it. Like when you inevitably move away for a little bit, just to give you a reason to come back and log in when you've done everything that you can do. So lastly, we talked about Code Vein releasing this week, the new game from Bandai Namco, the new try-hard Souls game, basically. Good news, you can get a free copy of Code Vein if you're going to be at TwitchCon. The bad news is you're going to have to literally give your blood to get it.
They're doing a blood drive for the Red Cross. If during TwitchCon on September 27th, this coming weekend, you can get a free copy of Code Vein as well as a, quote, promo blood kit if you donate blood to the Red Cross. And yeah, it definitely feels a little weird to trade your actual blood for a video game, but it's for a really good cause. Approximately every 2 seconds, someone in the U.S. needs a blood transfusion of some sort. So even just one blood donation can potentially help 3 different people, according to the American Red Cross. So if you happen to be at TwitchCon, go for it. Give blood when you can. I am not allowed to give blood.
Yep. So stop getting tattoos, Carrie. You're being selfish. Keep it all your blood because of your tattoos, you jerk.
So basically, because I get tattooed in Maryland, and Maryland doesn't have a board that oversees stuff well enough or whatever. I don't know the exact reason. I actually have to go like a full calendar year after getting a tattoo in Maryland before I'm allowed to give blood. So sorry.
Yeah. So yes, I agree with you. Definitely give blood when you can. And look, if you can get a free copy of Code Vein out of it, great.
Yeah.
Like I said, who knows what strange things we'll need to use to pay for our entertainment in post-climate America. Blood might become a viable currency, or bottle caps. Hopefully you'll still be able to use those bottle caps at densepixels.com/Amazon to purchase anything. Of course, Amazon will probably be one of the few standing mega corporations that happens in our dystopian society down the road. The good news is that you can start giving money to them right now. So whenever you buy anything on Amazon, big or small, make sure you use our link, densepixels.com/Amazon. We get a small percentage of the sale, helps support the show for things that we need to do to keep the lights on, like hosting and things of that nature. We really appreciate it. And again, Jeff Bezos doesn't need the money. They're going to be one of the only 6 corporations on the planet eventually. So they're doing fine. Give us some money. So again, densepixels.com/Amazon. And again, just like I say every week, you don't have to get the free 2-day shipping. Get the free Super Saver shipping. And that way the 60-year-old man who has to keep running from one end of the warehouse to the other can take it a little slower. Maybe not have to get a hip replaced very soon thereafter. So moving on, the big topic of the week is going to be our experiences, Carrie and mine, with The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, the Legend of Zelda game that doesn't feature Zelda anywhere in it. Just released for the Nintendo Switch. For those unfamiliar with Link's Awakening, this is a ground-up remake, and a very faithful remake at that, of the Gameboy game that came out back in 1993. And both Carrie and I actually played and beat the game on Game Boy as well. This is actually
For me, it was Game Boy Color.
Oh, sorry. I had to play it on the dual color Game Boy. I had to suffer through that. Yeah. And Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong. This is your favorite Legend of Zelda game, is it not?
It is. This is my nostalgic favorite. This was my first Legend of Zelda game. My exposure to The Legend of Zelda was at like a neighborhood barbecue that my parents took me to, that their friends were hosting, and there was one other boy there who was about my age. I guess I was in 4th or 5th grade at the time, because I had already had a Game Boy. I had a Game Boy Color, and I had my copy of Pokemon, and I had that with me. There was another kid there, my age, who also had a Game Boy Color, but he was playing The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX on his. And he let me start a new game on his cartridge, a new file, and I was hooked immediately. I hadn't played a game like that before. I had really only played Pokemon previously and like Frogger on my mom's Atari. And I was like, I had heard of The Legend of Zelda before, but this was my first time playing it. And I, like, the next morning, I, like, demanded that my parents take me to the local Funko land so that I could spend my allowance money and get my own copy. And really, it was my exposure to Link's Awakening at that time that sort of, like, nudged me further into the video gaming rabbit hole, and exposed me to a different genre of gaming that wasn't Pokemon, that wasn't turn-based combat. And it took me a long time to beat that game as a kid. And now as an adult, I've had it for like 4 days and I'm at the last dungeon. So clearly I've gotten smarter.
Yeah, we so both of us are pretty far into this game. Carrie is at the last dungeon. I'm at the 7th dungeon of 8 in the game so far. So we've played through a pretty good chunk of the game. This game is very vexing to me in some ways
Okay.
because from a visually aesthetic standpoint, it is spectacular.
I love it.
It is the best looking overhead Zelda game that they have ever come out with, bar none. I really like the art style, which is very
The little plastic toys and a
Yeah.
diorama. Yeah.
I think it looks really good. The quality of life improvements are fantastic. For those of you unfamiliar, the Game Boy
Shit.
only had a D-pad, a start and select button, and an A and B button. So that means that at any time you could only have 2 items equipped. That includes
Including your sword and
your
shield.
sword, including your shield, including your boots once you get the Pegasus boots. All that stuff. So the one thing I do remember about Link's Awakening is that you were constantly hitting the start button to pause to go into the inventory menu to switch what item you had equipped based on the specific thing that you were doing at that time. Got a little tedious. So now things like your sword are mapped to one button. Things like your shield are mapped to a shoulder button. Things like the Pegasus boots are mapped to a shoulder button. So you don't have to actually equip those. Kind of wish they'd done the same thing for the rock feather, but I'm not, beggars can't be choosers. Just map that to a button as well. So the item switching, not nearly as prevalent in this one. I don't remember. So you probably played the Game Boy version much more recently than I have. Did the warp system exist in the Game Boy version, or is that a
Yes,
new...
but it was more limited. You had about 3 different warp points that you could go to, maybe 4.
Okay, because I don't remember the warp system in the Game Boy version. So that was also...
you still had to go find Mambo and learn Mambo's Mambo, and that enabled the warp system. But there are significantly more warp points in the remake than there were in the original.
Okay,
yeah.
So I thought I was remembering that correctly. That is a welcome improvement.
Yeah.
However, there are a lot of things in this game that remind you very much that you are playing a Game Boy game that was developed 25 years ago. So one of the things that's super weird. So the Game Boy, of course, had a 4:3 display, and the Switch, of course, has a 16:9 display. It's a widescreen display. Now, the game on the Game Boy was used to taking, it took place in blocks at a time. Like even on the overworld map, you would still be. It was like the original Zelda game, where each section of the map was like its own room.
You had basically 256 different screens that made up the map.
Yes. So it's not that way in this game. The dungeons are still like that, but the overworld is an open overworld, much like you'd find in, Link to the Past or any games like that. However, they have this weird effect where there's like a blurred edge around.
Oh, I like that. The sort of bokeh effect to it. Yeah, I actually really like that. Chris was watching me play it and he didn't like that at all. But
I'm not a fan either.
I like it because I feel like the bokeh effect sort of creates a dreamy sort of atmosphere to it, but it also it allows you to still focus on what's happening in the center of the screen without sort of like overloading you with too much other information by sort of giving the bokeh effect. So, but I can understand why people wouldn't necessarily like it.
Not a fan of that. The other thing, and this might, so I was trying to reconcile this. So a lot of this might be that nowadays as gamers, we are very coddled when it comes to games giving us direction. So like in most modern games that we play, there's always like a waypoint on the map that's telling us, generally where to go to. It's usually pretty cut and dry and straightforward what you need to be doing to get from one area to the other area. I spent a lot of time in this game wandering around the overworld because I can't quite remember who I need to talk to or who I need to go see in order to find a quest item that I need in order to advance the game forward. And the game really doesn't do anything to help you remember or point you in the right direction outside of...
It does one thing.
Right, it has the little phone hint dude.
Yeah, you can call old Uncle or Ulira and he'll give you a hint as far as where you're supposed to go next. For me, I didn't run into that too much because I did remember so much of it.
And
basically
see, I don't
right
remember...
up until level 7, right up until I was like, all right, I have to go like get a zombie rooster to carry me to the top of this mountain.
And see, I didn't remember any of that. I spent probably an hour trying to figure out how to get into the castle, because like I knew I needed to get into the castle to get the golden leaves, but I couldn't remember how. Then I remembered that the monkey outside of the castle would build a bridge to get you in the castle, but he needs bananas. And I knew I needed to get bananas from the crocodile on the beach, but he wanted canned food, and I couldn't fucking remember for the life of me where to get the canned food. And it took
the
me
trading game.
Right,
Yeah.
and it took me for fucking ever in order to, the trading game. And I'm in the middle of another one right now, because right now I have a broom in my inventory, and I know I have to trade the broom for a necklace that I can then take to the mermaid to get the scale to put on the statue, and I don't remember what that does once I do that. I don't remember who needs the broom. I haven't.
Grandma in the animal village needs the broom.
I thought I talked to everyone in the animal village. God damn it.
Nope. Yep.
So,
you got to go back to the animal village because grandma's there and she needs a new broom. So.
God damn it. So we'll see. There you go. So like, but like I said, that's the obtuseness that I'm talking about that sometimes happens in the game. And again, maybe I'm just being an old man, and like not wanting to work that hard. But man alive, I wish that, when you're wandering around aimlessly for like 30 minutes, maybe that fucking owl could come back down from the sky and be like, go this way. This is where you need to go in order to do the thing that you want.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, it is remarkably faithful to the original in so many ways, and that does include some obtuseness that was present in games throughout the 90s that is not really present in games anymore. The game really doesn't hold your hand at all. Sometimes you get a hint, and sometimes you're just like, talk to people until someone tells you what you want to know. But yeah, God, it plays so well. It looks so good. The music is really, really well done. And it's done in a way that I really appreciate because it's orchestrated. Obviously, it's not beeps and boops, but it's not a grand, large orchestra. It's sort of smaller groups. You're getting sort of like string quartets and like a piano with maybe an ocarina or a flute accompaniment and sort of smaller stuff. And it sounds very intimate. It still sounds lush and fresh and new, but it's a small group of musicians. And there are some tracks where if you're listening close enough, you can even hear the person like pressing down on the keys of the keyboard. And as a musician, I really like it a lot. As a big fan of this game, it's really nice to hear some of the music that so influenced my childhood, redone in such a fashion that I think really stays true to the spirit of the game. I don't know if I would have liked it as much if they had done larger ensembles performing this music. Yeah, it's really fabulous. My one gripe is like, again, like it's been 20 years since I played this game for the first time, so I like to think I'm a little wiser. But man, this game's pretty short.
Yeah. Well,
as a kid,
it was a Game Boy game. I mean, that's reminds you that.
It is a Game Boy game. I guess I get a little bit hung up on thinking that like, okay, when I was 8 years old, I spent $30, give or take, on the game because it was a Game Boy game. And as an adult, they didn't add really much new. They added the chamber dungeons, which I have fine. I haven't done.
I have zero
anything
interest
with.
in it. I'm not going to touch that mode in the game.
Yeah, I haven't done anything with it. I know that you should do it because you can get an extra fairy bottle if you do a certain set of tiles for Danpei. But yeah, I get a little hung up on the fact that like I spent $60 on that. Yeah. Like it doesn't necessarily feel like a AAA Zelda title, It doesn't feel quite as worthy of the $60 price tag as like Breath of the Wild did a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean I didn't even draw that comparison in my mind. I had the same thought process. But you're right. This game literally costs the same amount of money as Breath of the Wild does.
Yeah.
A game that you could easily play for upwards of 200 hours.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to.
So
And this one, I'm going to be
I'd
done
feel-
within 10, probably.
I'd feel much better about it if it was like a $50 game, but that's fine. That's like my one sort of like lingering hang up about it. That being said, it's just it's cool. It's so cool to go back to old school Zelda in a form like Link's Awakening, which is a game that I feel like even a lot of old school Zelda fans maybe missed out on because maybe they didn't have a Game Boy when the game came out. Or maybe they weren't interested in playing Zelda on a handheld back in the day. So it's a cool way to go back to the roots of the franchise after Breath of the Wild came on a few years ago and turns the whole franchise on its head with a wholly new style of gameplay. But yeah, it's for me, it's just as interesting to explore every little inch of like a small island as it is to ride a horse off into the wilderness in Breath of the Wild. It really goes to show sort of how far this franchise has come while still highlighting all of the things that have consistently made The Legend of Zelda a franchise worth playing over the last 35 years. So
I'm enjoying the game. Like you said, the overworld feels like a regular Zelda game. So for those that don't know the history behind this game, this game was essentially a side project done by a bunch of developers that wanted to basically try to port Link to the Past onto the Game Boy. And the project kind of started evolving on its own, that they eventually just made an original Zelda game, but using a lot of the same kind of design language. So that's why it does bear a passing resemblance to Link's Awakening. And in the overworld, you definitely sense that. And it feels like the overworld feels like the Link's Awakening overworld, just kind of compressed into smaller areas.
You mean Link to the Past?
That's what I meant. Yeah, I'm sorry, Link to the Past. The one place though where this is not the same for me, and this is interesting. I talked a few weeks ago that when the Switch Online service added the SNES games, I started playing Link to the Past, and I got pretty far. I'm in the sixth dungeon in the Dark World, which means there's only technically 2 dungeons left in the game for me to even complete for that one. The dungeon design in Link to the Past, I don't know why it's so much better than the dungeon design in Link's Awakening. The dungeons in Link's Awakening seem much more rudimentary than I remember them being. And not that they're bad, like the boss fights are cool. They also have like a mid-boss in every dungeon, which sometimes are more challenging than the fucking boss is.
God,
in a couple of them.
For fucking real. I got hung up on a couple of mid-bosses. I was like, why are you so difficult? And then I'd like 3-shot the main boss or whatever reason. Like, stupid. A typical old school dumb Zelda shit.
Yeah, I'm breezing through these dungeons, not really feeling challenged, where when I'm playing Link to the Past, like these feel like very full, very complex areas that you have to explore. And I think that Link's Awakening could get away with it back in the day because it was on a Game Boy. Like back then you couldn't believe, like, just as you can't believe that you can play Breath of the Wild, in your fucking hands, on the Switch, you couldn't believe that you can get that kind of a Zelda experience on your tiny little 2-color Game Boy console back in the day. Yeah. And so I was a little let down by that aspect. I mean, the price tag, yes, you are. I agree with you on that. But there's a reason I bought this game on cartridge, because I'm going to beat it and I'm going to trade it, because I'm going to beat the game. I'm going to do the color dungeon because I've never done that before, because I never had any of the DX version of the game or anything like that.
I enjoy doing the color dungeon again. That was fun.
And then I'm going to get rid of it because wait, you can access that before the end of the game?
I got it digitally. And yeah, you can do the color dungeon before the end of the game. That's the whole point. Is doing the color dungeon, because you get a buff of your choice.
I don't even know where it is.
It's in the cemetery.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you have to have the heavy gloves before you can get in there?
No, you need you can do the color dungeon after like the 3rd or 4th dungeon, something like that.
Wait, how's it in the cemetery? I've been in the cemetery. I've tried to push on all the gravestones. I just keep getting.
You got to push them in a specific order.
Oh.
Yeah. You can, so you got to go to the library in Mabe Village. There's that book up on the shelf.
I did get that book.
Knock it off the shelf. And it tells you the directions of pushing a very certain set of gravestones in the cemetery to unlock the color dungeon.
Interesting. Well, I'll have to try that then. Because like I said, that was the one thing that I was...
Yeah, you definitely
really
want to do that before you, like, take on the bosses in level 7 and level 8.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just because of the buff that you get from it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
well, good
yeah, ultimately, I mean, Link's Awakening, again, it's very much my nostalgic favorite. I have a lot of really positive childhood gaming memories attached to that game. And the faithfulness to which they were able to recreate the game in a contemporary format where it still feels very fresh while still maintaining the classic old school Zelda feel, it makes me really, really hope that they give this treatment to the 2 Oracle games that were on the Game Boy Color. Because again, I love those games. I'm a much bigger fan of Seasons than I was of Ages. But if they do to the Oracle games what they did to Link's Awakening, absolutely, you got my money on that one. I would love to play those games again in this sort of updated format.
Yeah, so. If this sells well, there's a real good chance you might get that. And the even better thing with that game is that would actually be a good value, because I can't imagine that they wouldn't just put both games and the optional boss and the combined boss on the on one cartridge.
Yeah,
that would be kind of wild if they didn't. But it is Nintendo. Stranger things have happened, for sure. So we'll move on to the Dense Pixels post office, which Carrie so kindly posted in lieu of me doing it later. Is where you can ask us questions in our fan group, densepixels.com/fans. We will answer some of them on the air. Michael asks, real talk, please explain to me what a turd farmer is in Borderlands 3. How exactly do you farm turds? So Carrie, there's a character that you collect audio logs from named Typhon de Leon, who's the first Vault Hunter. Who sounds like a guy from from the Bronx, basically, who was the OG Vault Hunter, apparently. And he started life as a turd farmer on Pandora, which is the desert planet that centers around the Borderlands franchise. I don't know what a turd farmer is. If this was anything but Borderlands, I would assume it has something to do with creating manure. But it's Borderlands, so perhaps skag turds are somehow worth money when refined. In the Borderlands universe. I have no idea. But he broke out from his turd farming ways and explored the universe and became the first Vault Hunter. Typhon de Leon. What a funny character. So, Cam says he finally got around to getting another Nintendo Switch, and he's been playing a fuck ton, his words, of Fire Emblem. I'm actually waiting both Pokemon games because I think for the first time he's actually going to get both. Do you think there will be enough differences to justify it? I know there will at least be some different gyms.
I don't know. This is the first time that they're doing version exclusive gyms. Other than that, I don't know if there will be enough differences to justify it. We know a few exclusive Pokemon like Sirfetch'd, who is my new favorite. I love him. I would die for that duck. We know that he's going to be exclusive to Sword. I have to imagine we're going to get a Shield-themed evolution of a pre-existing Pokemon for Shield. But yeah, I don't know if there's going to be enough to justify it because they haven't really told us much about the version exclusive content beyond the couple of gym leaders and the couple of Pokemon so far. I'm getting Sword. I'm probably not going to feel the need to get Shields, but yeah, I'm excited for Sword and Shield. Regardless.
I just want to point out that in this day and age that we live in, where people wring their hands about the exorbitant cost of DLC and the low value to cost proposition that DLC offers, that Nintendo has been pulling off an amazing grift for 21 years in getting people to buy 2 full price games for a handful of Pokemon.
For 25 years they've done that, yes.
Yeah. So kudos to Nintendo, the OGs.
Biggest media franchise of all time.
Right. The OGs in getting you to buy 2 copies of the same game. Essentially. Yep. Amazing. Aaron says, what is the most overhyped or disappointing game series? Whether you are unsatisfied with the conclusion, we already know what Carrie's going to say. The series ended prematurely / will never get a true ending. A series you tried to get into and played and were turned off, or just a series you don't understand its popularity or will never play despite its accolades.
I'm unsatisfied with Golden Sun. We'll get that out of the way. As far as most overhyped, I think Final Fantasy as a series is like potentially the most overhyped series on the planet. There's some standout games. There's some solid games in there. Absolutely. I will not deny that the Final Fantasy franchise has a few games where they are honestly masterpieces. But I think for the most part, Final Fantasy is an exercise in JRPG mediocrity. And I think it has long been the go-to for a lot of people when they talk about JRPGs. It's become the default. And I don't know that it is necessarily earned that spot. I think there are better long-running JRPG series that have been more consistently good, such as Dragon Quest, such as Tales, that don't have the popularity or the clout that Final Fantasy has. I think that's unfortunate. You
just opened me up to a revelation that I never considered before, because everything that you're saying is correct. Final Fantasy has rarely been the vanguard in terms of RPGs, whether, comes down to story, mechanics, things like that. They have adopted things that have been very successful in other RPG games and kind of refined them and sort of made them their own. Like you said, they're the most popular of mainline RPG franchises from Japan. Final Fantasy is the Apple of role-playing games in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Never even thought about that. And you are 100% correct in everything that you just said there, even though a lot of people's feathers are going to be ruffled.
That's fine.
When it comes to that. Disappointing. So everyone knows my love for the Mass Effect franchise. And while the quality of gameplay in the Mass Effect series, I think, raised in every iteration, the quality of story definitely went the opposite direction. Now, I thought a lot of the Mass Effect 3 hubbub was overblown when the game came out. Was the ending disappointing? Yes. Did it ruin your entire Mass Effect experience? No. Did they make good and kind of fix the ending kind of sort of later? Yes, they did.
Sort of.
They did. But man, was Mass Effect Andromeda... The fact that Mass Effect Andromeda is not ever going to be expanded on or teased out or get a sequel is really disappointing. And because I enjoyed the game and I enjoyed the story, not as much, the characters I didn't bond with quite as much as, the Commander Shepard crew, but I also came in on Mass Effect when Mass Effect 2 came out. So I'd already gotten, the hype wagon from the first game, and I was being told that, hey, you should definitely check this series out. And so the characters were just a little bit better fleshed out, but it just really sucks that because of how the game was received and because of how the game was launched, that EA just basically threw DLC plans on the scrap pile. I think there was a book that came out that tied up one of the loose ends in the story that was planned DLC, but they decided not to do it. There's some loose ends in the story that'll never be resolved and won't be said until the writers of the game say whether or not they did have a plan for these loose ends. That's really disappointing. That things kind of ended that way in the Mass Effect. Not in Mass Effect series. I don't know if we're ever going to see another Mass Effect game, to be quite frank. It wouldn't surprise me if we didn't, and that makes me very sad, and that'll make me pine like Carrie does for the Golden Sun 4 that's never going to come.
Nope.
Probably ever. And then a series, I don't know if there's a series because even series that I don't care for, like the Fallout series, for example, I understand why Fallout is popular. It's just,
that's
just
how
not
I feel
for
about
me.
Borderlands.
Yeah.
Like when they announced Borderlands 3, I was like, okay. And then, that being said, like I still understand its popularity, but like it's not something I'm ever going to play. That's how I feel about most first-person shooters. Like, I understand the popularity of Call of Duty or Battlefield or any of these or Halo, whatever. I'm never going to play them. It's not my kind of game. So to each his own.
To each his own. And again, the same goes for me, like Persona. Like, I don't understand why Persona's really popular, but I'm sure there's a good reason. You know, I don't actively dislike Persona. It's just like I look at that game and I'm like, I think it's weird that everyone likes this as much as they do, but you know, I'm sure it has something for everybody, basically. So yeah, because like I said, we're generally positive people. We like to prop up games as opposed to tear them down sometimes. Longtime listener, first time caller named Micah says, "Hi, Carrie. Apparently this question's for you. Now that you've done a few shows with Just Brad and a show with me, Micah, whom do you prefer? Keeping in mind that in our current culture, if you don't say Micah, you will be labeled a racist." I'll hang up and listen.
It's interesting, right? So like I've done this show with just you, Brad, several times. But I feel like Micah and I so rarely do shows that are just the two of us that it tends to get like a little crazier when we do it. Like when a few weeks ago, it was just the two of us hosting the Nerdpocalypse, and that was a complete disaster, and I enjoyed every second of it. So I feel like when I get to co-host with just Micah, it's like a little more of like a special occasion because it almost never happens. Whereas Brad, it's just another Monday, honestly.
Yeah. No offense taken. Like I said, that is I understand why that would be that way. So yeah, that was a fun episode that you guys did on the Nerdpocalypse for sure. And and that was also super different too, just because that, to my knowledge, that might be the only episode of the Nerdpocalypse that Jay was not on ever.
Well, maybe
he could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's correct.
You might be right. Honestly, at this point, I feel like I have done a show with every other person on the podcast where it's just me and them, except for Terrence. I think I've not ever done just like the Carrie Terrence hour, which would be a complete shit show, and it absolutely needs to happen now. But like, I've co-hosted with just you. I've co-hosted with just Jay. I've done that with Micah, and Jack and I have done that god-awful 50 Shades movie review together. So yeah. And clearly, like, I need to make the Carrie Terrence hour happen at this point. And
like I said, I love our group settings that we always do for these shows because I think that's the best dynamic. But I always think whenever we do the 2-man shows, regardless of which podcast it is, those always tend to get a little more interesting in some ways than when we do the full group ones. So that's why we don't do them that often. We got to keep them special just so that you guys don't get tired of that shit. Trey says, with the ever not really increasing divide of digital versus physical games, there should be no surprise scalpers are taking advantage of places like limited run games and jacking up prices for certain games on the resale market. What steps can be done to prevent this? Now, I was initially confused.
Nothing.
Yeah, I was initially confused when I saw this. So Trey is not speaking of your general release games. He's talking about the shit. So like limited run, does like, didn't they do like the Night Trap reissue?
Yeah, they did the Night Trap reissue, and they've partnered with indie games to do limited physical releases of stuff. So yeah, I mean, look, there's nothing you can do about it. It's a limited edition of a video game. You're always going to see scalpers going after limited edition shit. Same reason why you have like certain variant cover comic books on the secondary market for and hundreds more dollars and whatnot.
There's a new industry that I'm privy to this now, that is in watches. Companies come out with limited edition watches all the time. There's a watch called the Seiko Alpinist that is very popular with enthusiasts. Forever, people were like, what if they made a blue dial version? Because the normal Alpinist is green. Lo and behold, Seiko puts out a blue dial version, but it's limited to one retailer in the United States, and there's only 2,000 of them. It's sold out in about 3 hours, and now the prices you can find for it are 150% of what it costs Brand new. That's just the way limited
welcome
runs
to
do.
the secondary market.
Right.
That's just how shit works. Doesn't matter if it's video games or watches or comic books or trading cards or what the fuck ever. That's just how it works.
Yep.
And that's how it's always worked. And it's how it will continue to always work. And it sucks, but there's nothing anyone can do about it.
Yep. I mean, the only way to fix that is to increase production, but then it doesn't become a limited edition, doesn't become a special, or what companies don't want is they don't want more inventory produced than they reasonably know that they are going to be able to sell. Yep. And with limited edition stuff, especially when it comes to limited physical release video games in this day and age, because digital is a thing that exists, that is a very difficult thing to properly gauge demand for. And honestly, the companies don't really give a shit if people are buying that stuff and scalping it, because all they care about is selling it in the first place. And frankly,
they got their money. They got their cut. They don't give a shit what happens on the secondary market.
Right. And frankly, having that stuff out there at a price higher than what they charged for it, it creates this illusion of the game, of the property being more valuable than it actually is in a lot of ways. Anthony says, I chose Zane as my first Borderlands 3 character, and now that I've beaten the game and trying to ready for the end game, Mayhem 3 type activities, I've learned that I picked the worst character. Why didn't Brad warn me and advise me to do a flak build? Well, Anthony, that depends, sir. Apparently, from what I understand, Flak and Mose, who is the gunner, are the best solo characters. So if you're going to play solo, then yeah, you might have a difficult time. I also picked a tough solo character in the Siren, Amara, but I had no problems getting through the main game. Anthony, come play with friends like me, and we'll play together, and then you won't have to worry about Zane being a handicap. I think I'm gonna go with Flak next, though. Flak's the robot Beastmaster guy, who is non-gendered, which is very interesting. So, Stuart says, will esports become popular enough that we get esports movies? For example, a remake or sequel to The Wizard where he has to win a Super Mario Maker tournament. How could that even happen at the end? Because he fucking cheated in the original movie by having help from the Nintendo Power line.
I've never seen The Wizard.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm shocked at that, actually.
Right? Yeah, I've not seen that movie. I don't know. Maybe esports will become popular enough that we get esports movies. I don't follow esports close enough to give a shit, though. So
I think you'll see it in 20 years when the current generation, the current targeted esports crowd of people that are 12 to 23 years old age up and get into positions of power within the arts industry, because it'll be more relatable when that happens. And yeah, you'll see it one day if esports continue to grow at the clip that they're growing. I mean, for fuck's sake, we have esports on ESPN and TBS and legitimate cable networks now. And who'd have thought that 5 years ago? I'm sure people playing esports did, but I don't think the mass media or the rest of us did for sure. Nope. How can you win a Super Mario Maker tournament though? What would that even be?
I have no idea. I mean, I've seen people compete in Super Mario just to be the first person to finish a certain level or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't play Mario Maker. So
now, Carrie, let's rewind a little bit back to The Wizard. So you were at least aware of the story of The Wizard, right? I
have been aware of The Wizard.
Okay. It's a really funny movie, especially if you viewed it today, because it is very much a movie of 1989. When the movie
came released. Out 2 weeks before I was born.
That's crazy that you're not as old as The Wizard.
No,
that is kind of wild.
Almost, I am almost as old as The Wizard. Yes, that game came out exactly 12 days before I was born.
My my favorite part of that movie, and I think I've talked about it on the show before, is the fact that they at the main tournament. The game that's being played is Super Mario Brothers 3, which had never the whole movie was a giant commercial for Super Mario Brothers 3, which had been available in Japan at that point, but not in America. And somehow the girl character that was like her brother was the one playing in the game, despite having never seen this game before, knew the trick to crouch through the white block in order to go behind the stage map to get the warp whistle. Which I don't know how she would know that, because the internet wasn't a thing in 1989. And how would you know secrets and tips and tricks from this Japanese exclusive platforming game? So there you go. We finished with Leonardo. Now look,
who's just excited about Batman.
Leonardo is an awesome guy. However, I have learned that we differ polar opposites on the scale of games that we like. Leonardo, of course, the biggest Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order fan on the face of the planet. It's going to break my heart when that game is like a straight 7, and it's going to be, but I'm sure he'll love it all the same. So Leonardo, unsurprisingly, super hyped about this potential Batman Court of the Owls game. And when I said something in the post that was made earlier that, but it's made by the same people that did Arkham Origins, Leonardo's response was, Arkham Origins was a solid 7. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You shouldn't aspire to be a 7. Like we accept 7s,
No.
in our culture.
Like, this is fine. This is playable. You might even have a good time. But aspire to be a 10. Don't aspire to be a 7.
Yeah, it's one thing, like, if you hope it's a 9 and you get a 7, like, that's all well and good. But yeah, if it's just as mediocre as Arkham Origins was, that's not going to be passable in 2019 or 2020 when this game comes out. Arkham Origins came out 7 years ago. It's got to be great.
God.
So, but there you go. That is the Dense Pixels post office for this week. Thank you guys very much for submitting questions that we could answer on the show. And that's it for the podcast this week as well. So make sure you go to densepixels.com/fans so that you too can submit questions for the Dense Pixels post office. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Just search for Dense Pixels. Again, subscribe to the podcast on any app that you use for podcasts. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitch as well. Terrence is Apparition 410. Carrie is It's Carrie. And Extra Life donations still being accepted?
Yeah, so I am doing Extra Life again this year with all proceeds going right to help the kids at the Johns Hopkins Children's Center in Baltimore, Maryland. And this year I'm playing Pokemon Leaf Green, and I'm doing some donation incentives, so you can vote to pledge your donation to, like, pick my starter Pokemon, or name my rival, or this, that, and the other. My friend Sean, who I love dearly, but he's a Phillies fan, so he donated. He's currently in the lead right now. He's put $75 towards forcing me to play with a Charmander named Charlie in honor of Phillies manager and current hitting coach Charlie Manuel.
Charlie Manuel is the hitting coach for the Phillies again?
I guess so.
What?
Also, he also wants me to eventually catch a Krabby, evolve it into a Kingler named Scott that I have to call Scott Kinglery. So if you want to either continue to enable Sean's bullshit or vote for literally anything else, you can head to my Extra Life page. I've posted it in the group before, but I will do so again shortly after this episode gets posted. My goal this year is $500. I'm about a little more than $200. And I will be streaming that on my Twitch all day on November 2nd. So that's the morning after I go to a wedding. So we'll see how hungover I am.
I do not understand how you were able to play the same game for like 20 hours in a row. My ADD does not allow for such a thing to happen. Like, even on the fucking plane ride home from Nashville, I played like Slay the Spire for a good 2 hours and got really into it. But then I'm like, but I want to play some Guacamelee now. Like, I can't just sit there and play the same game for more than like 4 or 5 hours before I need to log off. It's very weird. I don't know how you do it, but I'm glad that you do. And a worthy cause, so definitely check that out. Carrie is always the de facto Extra Life person for Dense Pixels because I'm never usually available to do it because it's usually on a Saturday more often than not. Unfortunately, I'm usually precluded, and Micah, that's his, on his family days, and Terrence, I don't think could stream a video game for 24 hours if he wanted to. I don't know if Terrence could play a game for 24 hours in a row. So Carrie is sort of the de facto Dense Pixels Extra Life as well. So make sure you check her out. And again, she'll share the link in the fan group and click on that and kick a couple bucks over if you can. So that is it this week. Thank you guys again very much for listening and watching. We will see you all the next time.
Thanks.
You're watching the Dense Pixels YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button while you're here and make sure you check out our weekly podcast where we discuss the latest gaming news and our impressions on what games we've been playing.